So I'm talking today with Bob Fowler of Bob's Vintage Sewing Machine Service in Caldwell, Ohio. Bob, I am a fan of the 237, as this site might let people know. And looking around on the internet, I saw you've done a couple of videos on this, both a basic maintenance and a benchside chat. So as the you're sort of the definitive source on this as a result. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this machine. Um, there's a lot of legendary machines. There's the featherweights and the 201s and the 301s and a lot of others that have a little more fame to them. But the little 237, you gave some love online for, in your videos there. Let's start out with a little bit about why you picked them. What do you see in the 237?
First of all, thanks for having me. The 237, I think, is the most underrated of all of the Singer basic zigzag machines. And honestly, I think if you were going to if I was just to have one sewing machine, which God forbid that ever happens because I've got over 200 right now, but if I were only to have one, the 237 would be way high on my list to be the one to take. Number one, it's got a beautiful straight stitch. But number two, it's got the best, absolutely the best satin zigzag of any of the domestic Singer machines. And it's able to do that because the way the mechanism of the 237 is set up, as far as the machine is concerned, every stitch is not a zigzag, it's a straight stitch. Because the entire shuttle and bobbin assembly is going side to side as that needle bar is moving. So as far as the angle of attack of the needle and the hook and everything, it's always a straight stitch. It's just that it's moving around, and it just makes it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
You point out some other things in your video as well, like the pinned shaft under the bed. So you don't have timing problems. And, you look at that zigzag mechanism and it's not a cam. It's, there's you hear I've heard people describe this as the last machine that doesn't have any plastic gears. This doesn't really have any gears at all. It's brilliantly engineered that it really, the forks and the blocks and things like that are pretty bulletproof.
Yeah, Singer really hit it out of the park with this. I mean, unlike my beloved New York Mets, this is a winner, an absolute winner. Most of them, well, my favorite ones were the ones that were made in Italy, the Milan-made ones. But the ones that were made in the United States didn't necessarily have the dropping feed dogs. The Italian-made ones had, which the one I've got sitting next to me is an Italian one. Combining the dropping feed dogs, that just, what more do you need? I mean, a lot of people say the 401A is the best of the Singer zigzag machines. Well, all those cams, all those fancy stitches, I'm sorry, this is not the 1950s, and we're not making little girl clothes and little girl dresses. We don't need all those for me anyway, I don't need all those decorative stitches. But for a good solid machine that can pretty much punch through anything I put underneath the presser foot, this is my baby. It really is.
It's like I say, it's one of my favorites. And it's sort of an odd thing. You look, this is sort of a breaking point for Singer. You look at the history of the company. They're, at this time, the late 60s, they're fooling around sponsoring rock concerts for their record players, and they're buying computer companies. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And of course, we're only a few years away from the, regrettable touch and sew, touch and swear era. Very quickly they shift into the plastic cases, the plastic gears. I mean, this is sort of Singer's last hurrah, isn't it?
It's their swan song. It really is. You mentioned the touch and throws with their plastic gears. I do so well. Also, not just the touch and throws, like the 413 and a couple other ones, the 427s and stuff. I've done so many gear replacements in those machines. I can practically do them in my sleep. As a matter of fact, this one when before I moved out of New Jersey about a year ago. There was a young lady that lived about 1.5 miles from me, and she had a 413. And she called me up. I did a lot of house calls back then. She called me up. I came over to take a look at the machine, and I happened to have the gear in my toolbox that it was going to need. I sat down on a stool in her bedroom with the machine in my lap and did the gear change. And had done it about an hour, and she was like, "Huh?" But yeah, these machines, they're just bulletproof.
Well, the other thing is it's really sort of the last external
Yeah.
belted machine that they put together.
It is. And I'm glad that they didn't do an internal motor on them. I'm glad they didn't do a potted motor like some of the 201s and the 15 class machines had. The belted motor is great because when the motor dies, it's even an aftermarket motor is fine, you know. I've been toying with the idea of trying one of my 237s. I think I have 4 or 5 now out in the table that my Sailrite sits in because it's the same form factor, and trying it with a servo motor. But I did that with a 201 K3, but I've been toying with the idea of trying it with the 237. But I did have a customer in New Jersey that wanted me to convert her 237 to a treadle, and we did that, and it worked perfectly. So,
yeah, it's really hard to beat that 15 hook system. I mean, I think that, you know, obviously it gets reiterated in, you know, sort of a 90-degree form in later machines, but that, you know, like you say, that back and forth hook mechanism in there, it's you know, it's not as complicated even as the 401s or some of the other predecessors, but it really is genius.
Yeah, it is. And when like you mentioned, the turning the hook mechanism 90 degrees, adding that gearbox to turn it 90 degrees, you can't do the moving hook for the zigzag, so you'll never get as nice of a stitch as you can get with a 237. I keep on pointing in this direction because I've got one. I'm sitting in
show me your machine
now,
there.
and I'm sitting at the cutting table, and I've got a 237 right
here.
here.
Show us your machine there.
Okay. That's a 237M.
And that's obviously the Monza machine. It's got the bigger pressure knob on it and the drop dogs there.
Yeah. And I mean, in the sewing room right now, well, if you don't mind, I'll just pan over here with the laptop. I don't know how well you can see all that, but on the right-hand line going out is an old, I mean, same era as this 237 sitting here, a Singer 14U12 3-thread serger, which that will be around to make the bandages for the Battle of Armageddon, just like this 237 will. And then there's a blind stitch sewing machine, blind stitch hemmer, Sailrite, leatherwork, and my daily driver, admittedly, is my 95-10 industrial, which is now 95 years old this year. And then on the other side of the room is a portable table that at the moment has my 201K23 in it, although the 237 goes into that. It goes back and forth between that and the 237, and then my wife's 201-2. So, but there's a bunch of other machines in this room as well.
So I want to go back a little further here and talk about Bob's Vintage Sewing Machine Service. So tell me a little bit about your history with vintage sewing machines and how you came to acquire several hundred of them.
I have not retired from my day job yet, and I had no intention of hanging out my shingle before I retired. However, COVID came around, and that's how I had already started my YouTube channel prior to COVID. But anyway, the woman who was our cat sitter, woman Brandy back in New Jersey, she had gotten interest. I kind of got her interested in sewing and vintage machines. And then when the pandemic hit and nobody could buy a new machine for love or money, and everyone make masks, people were buying all these vintage machines off Facebook Marketplace. Most of them didn't work. So I had already done a number of machines for Brandy, and she was very active in the some of the Facebook groups. And people were complaining, oh, I've got this 66 or I've got this 201, blah, blah, blah. And she opens up her pie hole and says, oh, see my friend Bob. And
Well, but how did you come to that? I mean, obviously you don't you didn't just, suddenly realize the value of vintage sewing machines in 2020.
well, I learned how to sew when I was back. Oh gosh, it's about 45 years ago now. I was stationed in West Berlin, Germany, with the army band there from 1979 to 1982, and I learned how to sew while I was in Berlin at the Army Arts and Crafts Center. This German woman gave sewing lessons, and she taught me how to make garments. My then wife, I made a lot of her maternity clothes, right, and then I did a lot of repairing of baby clothes, and you know how army communities can be, they're baby factories basically. But anyway, I didn't touch a sewing machine again for many, many years after I came back to the States. And my wife and I got involved with a motorcycling group, the Goldwing Road Riders Association, which went out of business a couple of years ago. But as you move up in the organization, you're constantly changing the patches on your vests and everything. And it was getting expensive. And I know how to do this. I just didn't have a sewing machine for it. And I went out and I bought it off Amazon. I bought a Toyota Super Jeans J34 because everybody at the time was saying, it's the cat's meow as far as, domestic heavy duty machines. And that, and I'll respect you in the morning, is one of the great lies in the world. It's a plastic piece of junk. They claimed it could go through 12 layers of denim, but denim is more of a concept, I think. I think they were talking about denim colored tissue paper because
12 layers as long as you put them through 2 at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, we came upon an old Kenmore from 1969, very much like a 237 in layout, but without the moving shuttle mechanism. And I got that. I took it apart and got it working. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And then came a 66, and then came a 127, and then came a 15-30, and machine after machine. And pretty soon I had 50 sewing machines in the house. It was a very small house. And then one of the women in the Goldwing Road Riders Association, she said, hey, can you work on a featherweight? And I'm like, sure, I've done several featherweights. I can work on them. So I fixed her machine for her. And then she's like, hey, can you give a class on how to maintain them? I'm like, okay. So I did that. And really, it was through motorcycling that my service, I was just doing it for myself and for friends and family. But it was basically because of the Goldwing Road Riders Association and then the pandemic that I started doing them for other people.
Yeah, I have a similar story. I was a radio reporter for many years, and nobody really sold the equipment bags and equipment containers that I wanted. And so I started making them up and sewing them myself. And gradually the cheap machines I had weren't working, and I had to make do. And lo and behold, here I am.
Well, it's like, I bought the Sailrite leather work, not because I'm planning on doing leather. I don't know if you're familiar with that machine, but it's got a honking servo motor underneath it. Then that is got a 2-to-1 speed reducer on it, so that you can make that thing crawl. And I just wanted something because I wanted to do like you're saying, doing bags and stuff. And I figured if that can punch through, leather, I can go through anything and to make bags with it.
I think you could probably sew car parts together with that thing.
You can. Well, Singer sewing machines salesmen back in the day, especially the guys selling the 15 class machines, they used to use flattened out, tin cans and they'd put like a number 22 needle on it and some really heavy thread. But as a part of a demonstration, they would stitch cans together. Try doing that with one of these plastic fantastics now.
Yeah.
But.
And so you've moved to Ohio, you're opening a new shop. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with you now.
Okay. Well, we wanted to retire. My wife did manage to retire this year. She's a musical instrument repair technician. She was with the same company for 48 years. Can you imagine?
So I want to stop you there because you mentioned that you were with the Army band.
Mhm.
Your wife is a repair technician. I mean, is there a nexus there between musical instrument work and sewing machine work? Did they complement each other in your mind?
No, I think what really complemented everything in my mind was the fact that she's a fantastic cook. She really is. She took me at 155 pounds and bumped me up to 230 in like 3 years. So, I mean, but no, it was weird because um, we met on a blind date and found out she was a crafter. And then when we found out she's a cat person too, that's what locked it together. But the thing is, it's like I was playing clarinet and saxophone with the 389th Army Band at Fort Monmouth when we met. And she tells me, oh yeah, I repair woodwinds at National Education Music Company. I'm like, in my brain, I'm still looking for the perfect alto saxophone. So I'm holding on to this girl. And I would bring home the first 2 years we were together, I would bring home saxophones and just leave them by her bench. She had a small workbench in the apartment we were in. And yeah, but I mean, she's very mechanically inclined. She's starting to learn to do sewing machines as well. But she does admit that I'm a better sewist than she is.
Well, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, so it's all good. But as far as coming out to Ohio, where we lived in Jersey, we were actually 14 miles as the crow flies from the old Singer factory. Like every time we went to IKEA, which is across the highway from Newark Airport, do a little mile or so detour, go over to the Singer factory, get out of the car, genuflect, get back in the car, go to IKEA. But there was tons of Singer machines in that area. I mean, I'd occasionally find a Kenmore. I'd occasionally find a Brother, but most of the machines were Singers because we're at the proximity to the factory. So that's how I got so heavily involved with Singer.
And they're great machines. They were, up until really the 237, they were.
Yeah. And it was funny how we wound up out here in Ohio was, I don't know if you're familiar with Promethean sewing machines on YouTube. Okay. My good friend Marie, she runs Promethean sewing machines, and she does a lot of custom painting of machines and custom decaling. Some people say it's defacing. I say it's beautiful, functional art. And anyway, we had never met face to face, but we'd known each other for a few years online. And it was actually a year ago this week, we came out to Ohio to their farm, which is about 22 miles from here. They've got horses and cows and stuff like that. Because I had a bunch of machines for Marie, and we had gone in on a purchase of some cases from China, and I was going to pick those up, bring her machines. And over dinner one evening, I mentioned to Marie and her husband, Mark, that, we were looking to get out of New Jersey, and we were originally looking in the Gettysburg, Pennsylvania area, but we weren't finding anything we liked. And Mark is like, you really ought to consider looking out here. And actually, the house I'm sitting in right now, we stood in the driveway of this house the very next day. We didn't have an appointment to see it. Nobody was home. But we stood in the driveway, and we didn't come back and look at this house for another 4 months. We looked at a whole bunch of other houses. But yeah, southeastern Ohio is it's beautiful 12 months out of the year. The people are nice. I love the fact that you have to travel to to get to the nearest Walmart. It's 20-mile drive in either direction, either north or south on I-77.
Well, it's nice now with as much as available online. You can do these. You can order. You can get these parts from Central Michigan in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, well, it's like I just got a big Wawak order in the other day, and 2 days it was here.
So you mentioned Promethean that does some refinishing. You just basically do repair. You're not a refinisher or anything like that.
I stay in my lane. I've repainted a couple of machines. it's not my strong suit. Marie has she has a tank where she can strip them completely, and she's got a media blasting cabinet if she needs to do that, and she does beautiful paint work, absolutely gorgeous paint. Actually, I've got a featherweight up behind me there somewhere that she did in a Pink Panther theme. You know, I've got a bunch of her machines. I absolutely love them as works of art, and they're functional. But between, you know, and our businesses complement each other. We help each other out a lot. Like if she has an electrical problem on a motor, I'll redo motors for her. If I've got something that I need to get repainted for a customer, she can do that. She's done that for me in the past. So it all works out, you know.
Well, you obviously have a lot of expertise and experience with these vintage sewing machines.
Well, you know, it's not that hard to learn, you know. I mean, when I die, NASA's not going to mourn my passing. All right. And if I can learn to do this, anybody can. Really, it's not that tough. The secret to success is look at it as a system of systems. You know, you say, all right, how does the feed system work? And, you know, you just look at the mechanism, study it, turn the balance wheel, watch the parts move. You see how the parts interact with each other. You say, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. Likewise, the stitch forming mechanism or the zigzagging mechanisms or whatever. It's not that tough. It really is.
Take pictures before you take things apart.
Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely. But I am so proud of myself. I can honestly say that even with the very first machine, going back to the very first machine I took apart, I have never had an extra screw. Never had one left over at the end. So
I lose them and have to go find others. That's that.
I didn't say I've never done that. I've done that a number of times. And especially with having multitude of cats will steal things. You know, so I have to be very careful when the shop is in another building here, which is wonderful. But when we were in our old place, the shop was in the main part of the house, and occasionally the cats would steal something, and I'd have to go looking or replace the part.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks so much for this discussion on the 237. It's going to be on the singer237.com website. And your website is bobsvsmservice.com, correct?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And you have a YouTube channel and Facebook site. What's the best way to be in touch with you?
I don't have a Bob's VSM Facebook, just a YouTube channel. And if people want to find me, just search Bob Fowler Sewing Machine. I show up. I've got over 400 videos.
Excellent videos. I would like to add some of the best on the internet. They're just there are very few people that do as informed instruction as you do. So I'm very grateful for what you've got out there.
Thank you. You know, I've got a thing too. Is I don't mind when people contact me. You know, drop me an email. A lot of people just give me a call too because they see my business card in the videos. They see a phone number. That's my cell phone. I mean, I don't hide it. If people have any questions, or if they're having a problem, or if they need, you know, little hand holding to get through a project, I'm all about that. I mean, we are a community in the vintage sewing machine world, and none of us is going to live forever. And like I like to tell my wife, you know, I didn't get all that grease and dirt under my fingernails for all these years to die taking all the stuff that I know with me without sharing it with somebody else. So,
well, thanks so much for sharing with us, and keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks, Tim.